Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 25th of January 2023. I'm Councillor Ian Massey and I'm the convener of the Planning and Placemaking Committee. Let me introduce you to our top table today. I have Councillor Grant Stewart, Vice Convener, Mr Christian Smith, Development Manager and Building Standards Service Manager, Mr Paul Williamson, Team Leader who's joining remotely, Mr Colin Elliott, Solicitor and Miss Jessica Guild, Committee Officer. The usual housekeeping, can I remind members, as this is a hybrid meeting, members who have joined virtually are reminded that if you leave the meeting during the consideration of any application, then you are unable to participate or vote on that item when you return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration of any item, then they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting or you have lost connection. And whilst we are operating a hybrid meeting for the proceedings today, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, which all members should have access to. Q for question, C for comment. I will now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and the attendance of those in the chambers and online. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies from Councillor James, with Councillor Forbes substituting and Councillor Reid with Bailey Ahern substituting. All members are present in the chambers with the exception of Councillor Drysdale, who I will ask to confirm he is present online, please.
Yeah, I'm present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask members, are there any declarations of interest on items today? Put DI in the chat, please. No declarations of interest. Can I ask the committee if they agree the contents of the minutes of the Placemaking Committee of the 23rd of November 2022? Thank you. And I advise the committee that there are no deputations for today, any items of business today. Right, swiftly move on to major applications. This is an application for the formation of an energy storage facility comprising control building, battery storage container units, ancillary equipment, boundary treatment, landscaping and associated works land at 170 metres south of Newhouse Farm, Perth. And I believe Christian Smith is speaking to the report. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Convener, and happy Burns Day to all. I hope you enjoy, even if you don't like haggis, but you'll be glad to hear that I won't be presenting in prose today. But initially, in relation to the matters before us today, I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the circulation which set out some updates to conditions and an informative from the version that was initially issued. This resulted from some quality control checks which were not completed as early in the process as we would have liked. However, there are no fundamental changes to the issues or the report in itself, and it is consideration of that updated recommendation of conditions which is before you. If you have any questions, happy to answer, but I hope all is self-explanatory. Turning to a short presentation on this first application, which is a battery storage facility north of Noah's Ark and on the western periphery of Perth, west of the A9. The site being within an area identified for future development and often referred to as Perth West. Thus, although the soils present fall within the prime category, the principle of development in this area is accepted by LDB2, notwithstanding condition 20 seeks to retain and repurpose the soils within and as part of the development. Moving on to the series of images, first we see here an aerial image for orientation purposes and showing the site in red with the access from the public road, Old Gallows Road, leading north to the application site, which is roughly rectangular in shape. The A9 can be seen running along the east side. Next image. We now see a similar plan visual with the proposed layout overlaid and the golf driving range visible to the south. The next image. This shows the proposed layout in more detail and also has the section lines overlaid and the cross that you see there. and the driving rate. These are then set out in the next slide. So turn to the next slide, please. So this final slide sees those sections demonstrate the proposed levels and indicating the cut and fill from east to west, with bunding and landscaping most obvious on the west side. Next and final slide, we return to the aerial image and the end of the presentation. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have any questions for officers? Committee.
If I'm not ready yet, I'll go with those first of all. Just three quick questions. First one was to do with the actual equipment itself. As you know, the old style where people were concerned about fire. Is this the new version of battery storage? The older ones were susceptible to catching fire, and I believe the new versions are much better designed. So I just wanted to clarify that these are the new designs. That's the first question.
I think it's been discussed at a number of previous committees. Technology is continually moving on, and the expectation is that these proposals, which will be developed in the future, will be the latest of technology.
Thank you for that. And the second question was, I note that in the conditions it says that if the equipment ceases to be used for 12 months, it's got to be removed. I just wanted to check in the future, obviously, how easy is it to take these out? Because I'm just thinking, in due course, energy sources may change and these storage facilities may longer be required. So are they relatively easy to take out the field and return that field to its original status?
Again, this is common practice, and the full expectation of the developer will be that that will be the requirement, and they will be set up to undertake that removal as and when it's required.
And the only other question I was going to ask was, there's quite a few paragraphs on drainage and flooding. And I just wanted to confirm that the field isn't susceptible to excess flooding, surface flooding.
It's not identified as being subject to surface water flooding on SEPA flood mapping, no.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. My question is with regard to noise. This will be an unmanned site, so to provide residents of properties in the proximity of this area, do you believe that the recommendations for noise assessments is robust enough, given that this will be unmanned and any complaints may take time to be resolved?
Thank you. We are satisfied, and we have looked at this issue, and the site is monitored, although unmanned remotely. But I'll maybe ask my colleague from Environmental Health, Lynn, to give you a bit more information on the detail of assessment that's been undertaken.
Yep, a noise impact was carried out for the site, and we were satisfied with the methodology. And on the back of that assessment, conditions were set with regards to noise levels, and it was established that the NR25 for the evening period could be met. The site will be monitored, although it's not manned, and there is a condition set that if there is any complaints whatsoever, then the operator must get a noise consultant in straight away. I hope that answers your question, Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. It does, but I still, I'm questioning if this is robust enough. Yes, they've had there has been submitted a noise assessment prior to the units being installed, but would it be prudent to maybe add a condition where there is an additional assessment done once the units are operational. I know I'm sounding that I'm being a bit fastidious on this, but you know, I'm trying to give the residents of the area, because there are quite a lot of residents in that area, satisfaction that noise has been fully looked at and the impact that that may cause to their daily lives.
I'll take that first, Lynn, if that's okay. We have looked at this very robustly. The noise assessment follows all accepted methodologies, and we do have a condition that provides additional control. So if there are any justified complaints that raise noise to this site, which again, looking at the detail of it, is immediately west of the A9 dual carriageway, which means that the ambient noise levels are significantly higher than you might expect, then we have controls in place which would allow us to investigate whether there was any significant noise issues that were above the appropriate levels.
Councillor Waters.
Thanks. Thank you, convener. Just a quick a question on the lighting levels. I know in the main report here it says that will only be lights that will only be on for maintenance and for security purposes. Just some reassurance from the security on the security side that sometimes the lights flickering on and off can be more annoying than them being, or more noticeable than them being on constantly, and just that the technology or the implementation as such will be that doesn't happen, that they're not kind of set off with animals or stuff like that, and it will just be when there is a proper security issue.
I think again that is standard practice in terms of sensitivities related to security lighting and everything associated to it, and that would be managed by the operator of the facility in itself. But notwithstanding that, we have condition 6 which relates to lighting and requires that that's sufficiently screened and aligned so as not to allow for direct illumination of properties that would be sensitive to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Billy McLaren, you have another question?
Thank you. Excuse me, I've got confused with the next application, so I don't, but thank you.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I'm just I'm not clear how this links into the power grid, so I'm just wondering if someone could explain how it's going to connect to the power grid and whether there needs to be overhead power cables or whatever.
Maybe if we can go back to the aerial image, which was the last slide that we left on, the connection would be to the substation, which is across the bridge on the east side of the A9, and it would be routed towards that.
So does that mean there'll be an overhead cable going across the A9?
It would be routed via the bridge.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, I wanted to return to the issue of noise, and in particular, you know, the residents of Robertson Road, a road I'm quite familiar with, have on many occasions complained to me about the noise from the bypass, which obviously is in between their properties and this proposed site. Can you confirm that the consideration on the officers' considerations on noise have taken into account the existing daily background noise from traffic on the A9? Because I think it's the combination of any noise from this plant and the traffic noise that will be of particular concern to local residents.
Yeah, I think again, you know, standard methodology requires that the background noise levels are accounted for, but again, I'll defer to my colleague Lynn Reid to advise you in more detail.
Yep, the noise impact assessment did take into account the A9 and road traffic noise, as well as noise from the facility when it's operational. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Drysdale, Councillor Drysdale.
Dr. Drysdale, that's,
Yeah,
that's a
sorry.
new one. Step into my surgery. Okay, so yeah, okay, so you're stating quite clearly that the noise assessment has taken into account that background noise, and can I just clarify as a follow-up that you're satisfied that the combined noise from the traffic and this proposed plant would be within acceptable parameters?
It's more likely that the A9 noise will actually will kind of damper down the noise from the operation itself, because the A9 noise is actually louder than the noise coming from the operations. But it was taken into consideration, and I am satisfied that the noise from the operation of the facility will not affect residential amenity.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see there are no more questions. I'll give it a second if anybody else has a question. Nope. Oh, sorry, I'm not seeing anything. No. 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 Oh, there it is. It's come now. It just came there. Sorry. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Yeah, a further question I have is with the construction hours, 7 till 7, Monday to Saturday. And the reason that the restriction is given is in the interest of residential amenity. I see that the construction period will not last for a great length of time, but equally till 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening. You know, does that really fall within a residential amenity satisfactory standard of local environmental quality? Surely a Saturday afternoon, we would expect to see no construction activity.
Yeah, again, happy to answer that. The restrictions are based on assessments associated to noise impact and other disturbance, and that is the acceptable levels. But again, I'll maybe defer to Lynn to give comment on that.
Right. Yeah, my understanding was that the condition that I requested was the standard operational hours for construction.
Which would have allowed, which would have allowed for Sunday working, but given the given the route that's taken here, which requires it to go through residential areas, we've gone beyond what is normally required.
Thank you.
Thank you. And no more questions? No. Can I ask for a motion for this, please? Councillor Braun.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yes, the motion to move the paper as is. I think we have to accept that with renewable energy, we are going to see more of these battery storage facilities until another resource comes onto play. So I'm happy to move the paper with the amended conditions.
Councillor Cuthbert, you're seconding the motion.
Yes, thank you, convener. As Councillor Braun said, I think this is actually quite a useful thing to have for Perth. Should there be power cuts and so on, you've got the storage of the electricity that can be used. So I think this is a good thing, and I would second the motion.
Do we have any amendment? No amendment. And then the planning permission, yeah. I just switched this. Sorry, planning permission is therefore granted as per revised conditions. Thank you. We now move on to item 521, which is the erection of 20 dwelling houses and associated works land 70 metres east of Losset Park, Losset Road, Alyth. And to introduce the report is Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, convener. And again, firstly, I'll draw everyone's attention to the circulation, which updated the wording of conditions and informative from the version initially issued. Again, the reasoning being later than anticipated quality control checks. And similarly, there are no fundamental changes to the issues under consideration within the report. And it is the updated recommendation which is before you. Again, happy to answer any questions in relation to this, but hope that all is self-explanatory. Now to the presentation and a short summary of
Go switch yours off. Can you hear that now? Right. Okay, we'll have to be right up at the mics then.
Okay, now to the presentation and a short summary of the proposals. This application site is being adjacent to Losset Road in Alyth, and planning permission sought for a total of 20 dwelling houses comprising a mix of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties. Of these, 4 are 2-bedroom semi-detached bungalows and the affordable housing requirement. Now to the series of images. First, you see this aerial image which indicates the site in red and its wider relationship with the eastern part of Alyth between Losset Road to the south and Meat Hill Road to the north, with existing residential properties north, west and east, while the Fife Jameson Pavilion and Diamond Jubilee Park are to the south. Next slide, please. So here we see a plan showing the site and its surroundings in a little bit more detail, including names of properties, etc. Next slide, please. We now see the proposed layout with the existing access off the A977, which is Losset Road, being reused. A loop road to adoptable standard sees 16 properties face onto it, whilst 4 bungalows flank the entrance onto Losset Road. Next slide, please. This plan shows the intended cut and fill in relation to the proposed site layout and existing topography, as well as the relationship with surrounding building heights. Next slide, please. We now see the elevations associated with a westray house type and indicating the overall architectural and external finishing materials, which include white render and large cladding, together with grey concrete roof tiles. Windows and doors would be grey UPVC. Next slide, please. So this last plan shows the similar design characteristics of the bungalows. Again, we see the same external finishing materials. The floor plan is also shown. Now we move to a series of photographs. First, we look from Losset Road in a northerly direction up towards the properties accessed off Meat Hill Road. It also gives an indication of the gradual rise northwards. Next slide, please. Here we look along Losset Road, giving an indication of its existing situation and boundary enclosures with footpaths on either side. The existing road is relatively narrow, widening at either end. Next slide, please. We now move to within the site just off Losset Road, looking east towards existing dwellings to that east side, those in the centre of shot sitting at a slightly higher level. Next slide, please. Here finally we have a panorama taken from the north, looking south from the boundaries of properties on Meat Hill Road towards Losset Road and beyond across Diamond Jubilee Park. This also indicates the undulating existing topography which falls in that direction. Next slide, please, which takes us back to the site plan, and thank you, convener. That now concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have any questions for officers? I see there's 2 in already, actually. Bailey Williamson.
Okay, thank you, Convener. I was just wondering if it's possible for Christian to go back to the actual site layout of the buildings on the slides. And I was just wondering if you could get a comment on how the houses are arranged. It appears, looking at the way that that's the one. The way the houses are laid out is there's 5 different types of houses, yet the affordable houses are stuck on the edge rather than integrated into the actual scheme. So I was wondering if it's possible to get a comment on that.
I think they are at the most prominent location at the site entrance and front and centre within the development. Their design as well is complementary to those other ones, and I think that is an ideal situation, is my comment on it.
Okay, so okay to come back with my second question.
Yes.
The second question is, I've noticed there's 1 or 2 objections regarding that contain concerns about access to healthcare. But they don't seem to have been addressed one way or the other within the papers or the comments. Are we satisfied that there is reasonable access to healthcare on the back of this development?
Again, this is perhaps a question that's raised a number of times previously. The site is identified within the settlement boundary, within the local development plan. The healthcare through the NHS, Tayside, etc., were consulted during the development plan process and raised no concerns.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. It's really to do with the sewage. Am I right in thinking that there is a combined sewer serving the site, and the plan currently is to put the foul sewage into this, but not the rainwater? And if so, I understand there's a SUDS on the site, but how is the rainwater going to be dealt with? Will it actually feed back into that combined sewer at a later date, or does it get discharged some other way? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You look to paragraph 25 of the report. Scottish Water, who deal with the connections related to both foul and surface water, were consulted and raised no concerns in relation to the proposals.
Thank you. Bailey Ahern.
Thank you. My answer was partially answered by there. My concern was the cumulative effect of surface water, the fact that the site is on a slope, and it's the cumulative effect of the water be collecting right across that land going onto the road, and whether there's sufficient drainage in there to cope with either a moderate storm or the increased likelihood of weather that we're getting now. Is it sufficient, and the SUDS pond, is that sufficient capacity?
Again, referring you to paragraph 36 of the report, structures and flooding, the council's body that considers these matters were consulted and are satisfied with the proposed drainage arrangements, which would account for both the capacities required and a climate change addition on top of that. So there are no concerns in relation to the arrangements that are set out, but I'm not sure if my colleague Paul Williamson has anything further to add to that.
Thank you, Christian. Yes, I was just wanting to add that condition 7 was at the request of the flooding team as well. Members will note on the screen at present the SUDS pond is located towards the south of the site, in between plots 1 and plot 17, but they have to provide a detailed design of that, but that's obviously got to be subject to detailed consideration by ourselves thereafter, but we have got no doubts or concerns that it would be able to be delivered.
Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Convener. I'm referring to paragraph 92, which talked about cumulative impact with other developments. As you read the paragraph, it leads on to construction traffic as the subject. But reading the objections online, I think the cumulative impact referred to other buildings going on in Alyth and the infrastructure of Alyth to be able to cope with it. I just wanted to have a comment on that. I know Bailey Williamson's mentioned the healthcare, but I think there's a primary school in Alyth. I think, I'm not sure, but I may be wrong. But I think I said the objections were really about the impact of other developments moving into itself rather than construction traffic. And what was our thoughts on that?
I think I'll defer on that to my colleague Paul Williamson.
Thanks very much, Christian. No, certainly we have obviously consulted with roads during the planning application process. Yes, as we've acknowledged, the road network around here does narrow in places, but actually that adds to effective traffic calming, etc. Through liaison with roads, they have confirmed that they have no issue with the proposals and the general layout of the site, how it's accessed, etc. Hence the request for the condition on the construction traffic management plan. But if you have any other specifics on that, Dean Salmon may be able to answer that.
And maybe in relation to your comment in terms of education and things, the developer contributions officer were consulted and advises that there are no contributions required.
Sorry, can I just come back with that? It was just really we have no concerns about the cumulative impact of other developments in the area on Edith itself, not just the road's access to this site.
Councillor Forbes.
Can I return to the topic of health? It says there's no information to suggest there's capacity constraints at the local health centre. And Christian, that's pretty much in line with what you said to us. But can I ask, did NHS Tayside actually respond to a request for information? Have they specifically told us there is no capacity constraints?
I think maybe as an addition to what I said previously, that the point in time when NHS, Tayside, etc. were consulted was the duration of consideration of LDP2, and at that point they did not. Therefore, the site is identified appropriately, and there's no requirement to undertake further consultation with them.
Councillor Anderson.
Just two matters. One, just look at the external comments. The Community Council concerned about the drainage capacity in the area. What is the capacity within the area for housing? Looking towards the local development plan, we're talking about that coming considerations coming forward. What is the capacity available? Because we rejected an application maybe last meeting before at Meat Hill for housing there, but that was because it was outside the development plan area. But I just wondered what the spare capacity is in the sewage system there.
In relation to capacity and to infrastructure, that's why we consult with Scottish Water, which we did so, and they raised no concerns in terms of capacity issues.
So you're not saying how much spare capacity there is in it? They just say that they can accommodate it.
They raised no objection, and there's a requirement to make an application to them to seek a connection, but they don't say that there are capacity constraints. What the capacity is a matter that you should perhaps raise with Scottish Water, who may be able to provide that information.
Okay. The other point I have is with regards to the comment Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust, that you wish to ensure that there is some archaeological investigation of the site. Will that result of that investigation be made public? I know of the neighbouring area where there has been archaeological excavation, the local community council can't get any results forward at all. They won't release what they found or not found on site. You don't know whether the site is clear or not. Will these be made public?
Matters related to conditions would be published on the PKC website once they had been accepted.
Mr. Williams, do you want to expand on that?
No, Christian's answered it for me. Thank you.
Councillor Cuthbert, you have another question.
Yes, thank you, Convener. It's still on the same subject. I'm really not very clear because whilst Scottish Water were consulted, they said that there is currently sufficient capacity for a foul-only connection, which is why I was asking about the rainwater and how that's going to be treated. Is that actually going to be feeding into the network, or is it going into a ditch, or where does it get put?
Well, there's a sustainable urban drainage system that would attenuate the water, and then the discharge would have to be agreed. There's a condition that requires details of those arrangements to be submitted for the council's approval.
So I'm not clear what that means. Does that mean that it will go into the sewage network, or does it mean it will get put into the field? I mean, if there's a really heavy downpour, what happens to the surplus water?
Well, it would be attenuated within the SUD system and then discharged either to the public sewer network or to other arrangements as agreed with the council.
Do we have any more questions? No. Can I ask for a motion on this paper then, please, this application? Hesitation. Billy McLaren.
Thank you. I'm happy to propose the motion to pass this planning application, which will provide housing, affordable housing options, and it's a positive for communities moving forward. So I'm happy to forward this motion.
Do we have a seconder? I'll formally second it. Thank you. Do we have any amendments? Bailey Williamson.
Yes, I would like to propose that we reject the application. I'm uncomfortable with the site layout, particularly with regard to the affordable housing, which I feel has been tossed to one side of the developments at the expense of better provision. I don't feel it fully complies with the supplementary guidance with 7.10, so I would like to move that we reject this application.
Sorry, Bailey Williamson. Just looking at 7.10, I think it's a developer contribution supplementary guidance. I don't really, it's kind of a really descriptive part. Are you really referring to 7.11 because you referred to integration earlier on? Sorry, wait, sorry, my microphone's on.
Thank you. I believe, yes, it's about the fact that the houses aren't being fully integrated as outlined in, as I say, 7.10 and 7.11.
Councillor Brian Leishman, you're second. Oh, sorry, Councillor Forbes. I do beg your pardon, Councillor.
I actually think Councillor Leishman was before me, but it doesn't matter. I'm happy to go with. Well, I'm happy to second. I agree with what Councillor Williamson said. Sorry, Bailey. Apologies. Happy to second.
Are there any other amendments?
Members, could I just address the motion and the amendment? At the moment, what we have is, if I can check my notes properly, we have motion by Councillor McCartan, second by convener, is to approve, which presumably is in line of the revised conditions and informatives. The amendment by Councillor Bailey Williamson and Councillor Forbes, or Bailey Forbes, I'm getting confused, Councillor Forbes. There you go. Yes. I'm catching up. It's getting there. Is to refuse. Now, I want to turn to the amendment to refuse and the terms of that. Now, Bailey Williamson, I've actually, I appreciate that you mentioned the supplementary guidance, but the supplementary guidance actually comes from policy, and policy 20 in affordable housing also is where the mention of where practical it should integrate development. So I think it would be refusing on policy 20 and the developer contribution supplementary guidance for the same reason. Do you consider that it falls under any other policies? Those are the policy and supplementary guidance is what you're concentrating on.
I was focusing on policy, as I say, on the supplementary guidance, but as you say, if it follows the local development plan policy 20, yeah, I'd be happy to integrate that into it. Yeah.
If I could therefore come to the amendment, I think it would be refuse as the proposal is contrary to Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan 2, 2019, and that would be policy 20, affordable housing, and the developer contribution supplementary guidance, which I think is 2020, as the design and location of, I think it's plots 17 to 20, are not integrated and not integrated with and indistinguishable from the other houses within the development, and presumably given the sorry, I'll leave it at that. Yes, it was sorry. So it would be refuse the proposals contrary to policy. Sorry, contrary to Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan 2, 2019, policy 20, affordable housing, and the developer contribution supplementary guidance 2020, as the design and location of plots 17 to 20 are not integrated with and indistinguishable from the other houses within the development. Would that accurately reflect your motion amendment to refuse?
That's correct.
Billy McCann, do you wish to sum up?
In summing up, I would just say I still am happy to be proposing this motion. Throughout Perth and Kinross, we are achieving a strong target of affordable housing, and there is needs for housing to support local communities, local services, whether it be affordable or otherwise. And I am happy to be proposing the motion with the recommended amendments, not amendments, the conditions. Thank you.
Bailey Williamson. I'll hand over to the clerks for the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Members, when I call your name, if you can please let me know if you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Bailey Ahern.
Amendment.
Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale.
Amendment.
Councillor Forbes.
Amendment.
Councillor Illingworth.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Amendment.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Waters.
Motion.
Bailey Williamson.
Amendment.
We have 7 votes for the amendment and 6 for the motion, and therefore the amendment will carry.
So that's the application refused. So we'll now move on to item 6.1, which is a plan. It's the installation of a 49.9 megawatt ground mounted solar array and associated works land 500 metres northwest of East Soccer House, Kinross. Do you have any comments on the report? Councillor Forbes.
My comment request was actually on the previous paper, but as you'd moved on, I was just going to let it go. It's fine. Don't worry, it's okay.
Thank you, convener. I'm unsure if it's maybe more a question. And maybe the officers could just provide the information on this. This application, does that then, the electricity that does, what am I trying to say? The capacity that the capacity of electricity that will be required to service this site, is that something that is held within the system until this application has passed, is sort of earmarked? Maybe could you explain how that is viewed? I'm maybe not making myself fully clear here either. I can see by your face there.
I'll maybe try and ask your question for you. If you're meaning if there's capacity to connect to the grid, would that capacity be reserved for this development? That's a matter for the National Grid to consider. I understand not until a connection to grid is secured. And my understanding, but don't quote me on it, is that they cannot complete that process until such time as they have all consents and other matters in place. So what you often see, and actually what we're seeing currently in another location within Perth and Kinross, is a number of what seems to be competing proposals to secure the capacity that appears to be available at the substation connection to the grid.
Yeah, thank you. That just makes it slightly clearer. And you know what you're saying there about other applications. Yes, I'm aware that there's maybe impacts, but thank you.
Right, move on to the final item on the agenda. 6.2. It's a formation of a 30 megawatt battery storage facility with associated access and infrastructure on land 600 metres northeast of Gordon Farm, Abernethy. Do we have any comments on this report? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, convener. This is quite close to where I live. The concerns I would like investigated are these battery storage facilities are fairly unpleasant to look at, so I'd like to see that there's decent screening, and the route into this site goes through a path that is a route that's often used as part of the core path network, and it's often used by dogs and walkers, so I'd like to see a careful transport plan into the site. Thank you.
Do you have any more comments? No. No, that's us for today then. Thank you very much.